So in this segment, we're going to take a look at the Benrus. And a lot of you have already jumped in on this, and if you have, good for you, smart move, and you are in for a treat when you get this home in just a few days. This is a big watch. This is a 44 millimeter, and with the crown, you're looking at about 48 millimeter. It is assembled in the United States. And to give you an idea of how clean and fresh this is that you're ordering, our source literally carried this out of the vault from the manufacturer. These are not pre-owned. So let's talk about the price right up front, and then we're going to get into some of the specs. As we've talked about in the previous videos and so on, this has a manufacturer suggested retail of $395. And keep in mind that part of that is this was assembled in the United States. Here's the deal. You get this for just $59.99. Now, obviously, we did some research on this. We found some of them that sell for a little over $200. There's a very few that between $100 and $200, somewhere in there. At $59.99, shipping included, we know this is the best deal out there, bar none. And it's by a considerable margin. So let's talk a bit about the watch. One of the things I'll show you right up front here, and we'll get into detail, is that the strap on this is very generous. I wear almost exactly an 8, and I'd say up to a 9, maybe more, but I'll say up to a 9 to be safe from that perspective. The case, as I mentioned, 44 millimeter, 48 including the crown. It already has this very cool weathered effect going on, and I'll show you something else too right up front. The unidirectional bezel on this is very, very tight. Now, I'm not saying it's oil filled, but it has to feel like it is. It's a very high quality piece, which of course comes back to being assembled in the United States as this is. It's also rather heavy considering what it is. And I'm not saying that this is a monster or anything like that, but it's one of those examples where when you get this or any fine watch and you pick it up and you could just feel that it's a serious watch. You watch guys and girls know what I'm talking about. This absolutely has that capability. Or I should say a feature, and you'll see that obviously if you order this in just a few days. Again, the list on this is $395. We have it by far the best deal out there, $59.99 while it lasts. Now, this one is actually predicated on an original Benrus, was I believe called a Type 1, and that was used by the U.S. Armed Forces in and around the Vietnam era, give or take. Navy SEALs, I know, used it during that time. So the name of this watch is the H6, and that actually derives from a contest that was held several centuries ago. A guy named John Harrison won, and the challenge was to improve the calculation of longitude, because at the time, maritime vessel occupation, shall we say, was a really big deal. It was frankly quite dangerous. And he won that by dramatically improving a series of clocks that were used in that calculation. And those clocks ended up being named H1 through H5 after Harrison. So this one is the H6, which is carrying on, in a sense, that tradition. Now, I mentioned earlier this is a 44 millimeter case, 48 including the crown. Note the crown, by the way. Let's start with that. This crown, in and of itself, is a bit of a complex build. First of all, it's got some beautiful sculpting to it. It's not so much knurling. It would be almost like a very rough gear edge, but it allows you to navigate this very quickly, which is obviously the point in a watch like this. And there's some beautiful enamel on it as well. You're going to see the enamel. There's a trench that's actually cut into the gear edge, and then there's also this very cool anchor that's done in a very light, almost like a parchment color as far as the enamel is concerned. The dial on this to me is really interesting as well, because at first glance you go, well, that's just a flat charcoal dial, but which it is a charcoal color dial, but there's more to it. There's almost like an asphalt sort of a surface to it. And so on one hand it's flat, but on the other hand you're going to see a bit of a light play as it keeps hitting all of these subtle variations within that uneven surface of the dial itself. Luminous markers, luminous hands. The lume that was used in this is actually in the color, again, I referenced parchment earlier. Much like the color of the enamel, it's very similar to that. It really lends itself into that overall military feel. I think instead of parchment, maybe I should be saying like a desert tan, that sort of thing. And it makes total sense, especially when you add in that pre-weathered case. This is very cool. Now, unlike most of the H series from Benrus, in fact, I haven't seen another one do this. This actually has a series of color bars that are on the dial, and it's presented a bit below the 12. We see the brand Benrus, and below that, you'll see the red, white, and the blue. Again, the white, actually more of that antique kind of a desert sand thing going on. The other examples of this that I found, all for way more money, don't have the the red, white, and blue for some reason, but this one does, which is obviously very cool. Finished work presented on the nylon strap, as I talked about earlier. The buckle, by the way, is coordinated with the case. It's also weathered. And the water resistance on this is 10 ATM. Now, another thing I want to mention is the color of the strap, because it's actually sort of a, for lack of a better way to say it, I guess, it scintillates in color. On one frame, you'll see it as sort of a dark chocolate, and then it'll move into an army olive kind of a color, and it just kind of goes back and forth. So if you look at some of the still images, it almost looks like I shot different watches, but this is exactly the same watch, and it has this chameleon-like quality in the color and the fabric that was used in the strap, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy that. I want to show you something else I think is really cool on this, and I hope this is coming across in the shop, is that when you look at this from the top, the strap appears to be a two-section strap like almost all straps are, right? So it comes into the lug area. But there's actually more to it than that, because this has a separate section. Now, it's not like those leather straps where you can take the section off, that sort of thing, because this is more or less sewn in. But it's a really cool idea, and I'll take it apart to the extent that it can be done, which is there. All right, so this section comes out with the buckle, as you can see, and then this whole section, I'm not going to do it at the moment, but as you can see, it'll rise out, and yeah, actually I will do it, and take this out, and this is the back. Now, the back of this is actually three-dimensionally sculpted, really cool 5-point star across the back, and it lists the other I guess features of the watch would be a great way to describe it. And let's talk about a couple of those, by the way. One of them, 10 ATM water resistant, very cool. And the other is the movement that this contains. Now, of course, that's going to be important. And keep in mind that this is assembled in the United States, but contained within the 316L steel is a Swiss movement. Specifically, this is the Swiss ISA 608 quartz movement. So you've got a rock solid movement in there. The straight up 3-hand time a day is the goal of this movement. There isn't even a date feature on it. So, like I say, rock solid. Doesn't take up any excess power. There's no additional complication on the dial. And that's the point of this. It's a straight up time of day, very heavy military influence, as I've talked about. The crystal on this is a beautiful example of a very thick, very heavy mineral. And again, with a true military influence, sapphire is really not the way to go. Sapphire is not going to give you the resilience, the durability. You want the heavy, hardened mineral crystal, and this not only has that, but it's further been custom domed, so you get the whole lens effect going on. You get a little bit more magnification for dial features, which is obviously very nice. This one absolutely celebrates the holiday. Assembled in the United States, great U.S. military heritage. Listing again for $395. We have it at $59.99, shipping included. And I hope you'll enjoy this, because I'm very confident when you get this home, you're going to be blown away by how much wristwatch is here for a very small dollar spent. So enjoy your new Benrus. Excellent choice.